And I'm like as amateur as it gets with audio and video. I just think it's a fucking podcast.
Yeah.
Yes. Or turn it on.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it's at a slight angle,
No, it's
so he says some shit, you can just say, yeah, that's Kyle.
You should see our editing. It's classic.
Good to go.
We're live. Can you hear us all right?
Probably want to get that a little closer.
Okay. Should we prop it up?
Maybe we can crank you guys. I can crank your gain up. No, this is just headset volume. They'll have to do that afterwards.
Yeah, we can.
Perfect.
Do that.
We'll figure
Cool.
it out.
Just yelling that thing.
Hey Kyle, how are you?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm doing great, bro. I'm doing great.
Dude, this is awesome to be out here. This is my second time out here, as I was telling you, but getting the full tour was sweet. We're just excited to have you on. Know your background, but excited to just hear your backstory a little bit too. In terms of your athletic background, how you got into regenerative agriculture. I feel like there's a ton of people in Austin talking about getting into regenerative agriculture. So I think maybe just for our audience's context, just getting some context on your background, where you started, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, hell yeah. I grew up playing football. Really wanted to do that my whole life. Wanted to play pro ball. I set the bench when I was at Arizona State, which was still a great experience.
Yeah.
So that left me still hungry to continue the athletic career, and got into mixed martial arts shortly after that, and fought professionally for 8 years. Fought in the UFC my last 6 years. Along the way, had met some really important mentors that had helped me out. One of which was a guy named Paul Check, who I hadn't met yet at that point. Paul did a couple things for me. One, like he's a guy who was wearing "I Love Dirt" shirts, like 20 years ago. He's talking about soil health way before any of this became like a dire need, important conversation that we're all having. And one of the things that he did for me is he showed me fundamentally, like when I change what I eat, that means I will perform different, I will think different, I will recover different, like all those aspects. And fighting, football was tough, but there's nothing like MMA. Like MMA is just a whole different gear to get into, and the amount of times you fight versus recovering from injury, all those things become super important. And because I didn't have the same background as Daniel Cormier and Cain Velasquez, some of my teammates at AKA, like I knew I needed to learn as much as I possibly could. And so when I first got a hold of How to Eat, Move, Me Healthy from Paul Check, went through to the questionnaires, like, damn it, I got a fungal infection, I got this going on, and just systematically started to improve myself. Everything changed on a performance level. It was palpable. It wasn't enough to take anyone's word for it. I was just like, damn, like I feel way better. I have way more energy for my second and third workout. I'm sleeping better. He got me healthy, like that's plain and simple, And so like that to me, really, aside from what it did for my relationship with food and health, it was the first tidbit of information that I'd read post-college where I was like, oh shit, there's a whole world of information out here. If I access, that will change my life. This is like one of a few cornerstones, maybe the most important, but Paul lit a fire under my ass to keep learning, which had largely dissolved. By the time I was done with college, I was like, fuck reading. I'm not gonna, my strength coach who wanted me to read How to Eat, Move, Me Healthy, he goes, I got this book you should read. And I was like, fuck that. I'm done with fucking college. I'm fighting now, He's like, all right, will you watch a movie? And I was like, yeah, I'll watch a movie. Yeah. So we watched the Flatten Your Abs Forever video on VHS. It was all on gut health. It had nothing to do with getting shredded. Well, it did have everything to do with getting shredded, but it wasn't what it was. Kind of like he fucking pulled one over on me. But I watched the whole thing, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna read this dude's book. But that point on, like that really is what started my real education, and I had a boxing coach when I was fighting named Huitzilin, which is the hummingbird in Mayan culture, who was mestizo and phenomenal dude. He passed away a few years back, but he was the first guy that introduced me to plant medicine. And so, all the working relationship that I've gone down that rabbit hole with, I owe to him. And those are probably the two biggest mentor shifts that I've had, like that just changed the direction of my life completely. And they brought me to where I'm at today.
I mean, it's amazing with Paul Check, like just how many people in this holistic health space or esoteric health space he's influenced. And like you look at him too, what is he like? He's like 60, 61. he's absolutely shredded. And like at first glance, you're like, all right, is this guy like a meathead like everyone else? And he's got this unbelievably balanced approach, and it sounds like he had a massive impact on you too, right?
Yeah, he still does.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still like he's still my mentor. There's no doubt about it. We got to celebrate his 60th birthday last August out in San Diego, and we did a deadlift workout together. You know, I just turned 40 this year, so he's got 20 years on me. And he's like, I'm gonna go heavy, and I'm like, yeah, let's do that. I'm like, I still want to keep it in like a 5-6 rep range. He's like, oh, I'm gonna do some volume. So you want to add a plate? Sure. You want to add a plate? Sure. You want to add a plate? Sure. And I'm like, probably gonna I'll just stick with 365 today. And I'm doing sets of 5 with that, and he's doing sets of 12. And he's like, oh, sure you don't want to go up one more? And I'm like, I don't want to be fucking sore the rest of this trip, you know?
Yeah.
I like taking it a little easier, but I mean, he's just that dude. He walks the walk in all avenues of life.
Yeah.
You know, like he is easily one of the most spiritually sound people I've ever met, who also matches the physical soundness. There's a lot of guys in that space that dive into Jung's work or any of the esoteric stuff, and then they negate the body. You know, like they just negate the importance of your own physical instrument as the divine temple. And Paul is the living embodiment of what one would look like when they take care of both things simultaneous, you know?
Do you think an outsider would have noticed the changes that you were making initially when you started getting healthier and making some of the Paul check changes?
My mom noticed immediately. Yeah. She was like, wow, you're sleeping again. And I was like, yeah, how can you tell? She's like, you don't have dark circles under your eyes. And I was like, yeah, all right, that would do it.
Yeah.
Your skin looks better. The mood is such an important piece. You know, everybody talks about the aesthetics around food, but it's like when your mood changes and you're just more pleasurable to be around, like that's a fucking thing. You know, a lot of parents, I'm sure, listen to your podcast. When we all do it, there's the birthday party, you don't want to be that parent, it's like no cake for you, everyone else gets to eat cake, I get it. But when you watch your kids' behavior after they have cake or cupcakes, it's fucking night and day. It's like they're two different people.
Right.
You know? Yeah, like you can magnify, take that to everything you do. Take it to every little meal. Do you give them ice cream at the end of every night? Like that's always going to be there. Right? When you throw off that kind of, you know, the chemistry in the gut is the neurochemistry right there. Right. So like you're altering the gut's going to alter the neurochemistry.
Totally. That's one of the interesting things about people that are going carnivore and animal based is we almost hear more than the physical effects, people now talk about the mental effects, how anxiety, depression no longer bother them just by diet. It sounds like you've had your own experience with that, and probably people that you work with talk about that too, right?
Yeah, and buddies with the Carnivore Dog, Paul Saladino. I've had Sean Baker on the podcast back in the day. I've really only have had 2 or 3 stints at around 15 to 17 days of just carnivore. I've never experienced the keto rash. I spent a couple years in ketosis after I retired from fighting in 2014, and that was like paramount in healing my brain, allowing me to retain everything that I was reading. And but ketogenic diets weren't the best thing for mixed martial artists, you know, in between fight camp maybe. But so I did a deep dive on that for a couple years. Never had keto flu or rashes or anything. But carnivore would always give me this nasty rash.
Interesting.
And so, but I you know, having spent more than a couple of weeks there, I could tell you, like, one thing that is universal between the two of those diets is that you let go of the need to eat. You know, and that's such a powerful feeling where you're just like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I can eat whenever. You know, if I don't get lunch, fine, I'll eat at dinner. Like, if you're honest with yourself, I couldn't do that right now. I'm not in ketosis, I'm not on carnivore, right? Like at some point, I'm gonna fucking want to eat, and I'm gonna want to eat now. And if I don't have something healthy or good in front of me, sorry, that's just it. I have to eat. You know, and I think a lot of people are in that position. So when you first grab that, I'm not a slave to the interior of my body driving me to go eat food. That's a really powerful feeling. You know, that's when you really can make easy and conscious decisions. You know, it's like the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. You know, when you have that wealth inside of you where your body can use fat for fuel, all of a sudden you always have a stream coming in. You know, it's your compounding interest, right? And that's your body burning fat for fuel. But it feels incredible. You know, the cognitive ability improves. All those things, and it's something that you really don't understand until you experience. It's like psychedelics. Like you don't know it until you've done the thing, and then you do it, you're like, oh wow, that's what that is, right? Like it's that level of power.
What does your approach to that look like now versus when you were fighting, or even just like college football? I'm sure it's evolved a ton.
Oh man, yeah. Well, college football, I was a defensive lineman, and I was undersized, even though I was fucking jacked to the gills like Latimer.
Yeah.
You know, I was undersized still for my position. And I was eating whatever the fuck I could get my hands on. You know, I'd go to McDonald's 3 days a week. I'd get 3 sausage McMuffin with egg and cheese, 2 orange juice, and 3 hash browns and 1 coffee. That was my meal 3 days a week. And then I'd have the 3-day strength training with Coach House, where I'd drink, you know, whatever the weight gainer was. They'd fill these 5-gallon drums. I'd drink like 10 to 15 cups of that shit, and then I'd go eat and go to class. You know, I'd eat like 2 Freshetta's pizzas, and then go to Krispy Kreme after and wash it down with heavy cream, like anything I could to get my calories up. And that certainly came at a cost. You know, it's not the thing. Calories in, calories out. You know what I'm saying? Like there is a toll there in processing all that trash. And that may be why I felt such a deep rebound in a sense of well-being when I started putting good food in my body. But fighting was different. It was the first time I needed to cut weight in a long time. I had wrestled when I was growing up, but really wanting to lean out. You know, I saw a lot of fighters who came in kind of soft and just cut water weight. And it's like, no, I want the most muscle I can possibly fit on my body at 205 while keeping endurance, enough endurance to go 3 rounds, and as little fat as possible. So really, you know, that's when I started hearing about things like ketogenic diets, lowering the carbohydrate content in food, but still being as glycolytic as I was in MMA. Like I'd still need to get my starches, I'd still need to get fruited and things like that, just to make sure that I have enough energy to expend in the cage. But yeah, that's you know, in fighting is where I started paying attention. That's when I started eating clean food, whether it was carbohydrates or not. And since after the 2-year stint in ketosis, I usually run back something like a keto reset diet for a few weeks, once or twice a year. At Fit for Service, I've been hosting events with my brother Eric Godsey where we take people through a fasting mimicking diet. So we'll have a 1,000-calorie shake roughly for 5 days straight, and that shows insane benefits. Walter Longo's work on that. I credit him and I discredit him at the same time for a couple of things. One, he made it prescription based, so you need a doctor to sign the prescription for it. 2, he charges some fucking hideous number for it. 3, the stuff that he makes now is like 500 calories. It's watered down, inorganic tomato soup with saltine crackers, shit like that. It's not good food. We make these really high fat, ketogenic, organic shakes. And that happens at one point in the day, you know, so you're getting warrior diet aspects there. And then after the 5 days, though, the beautiful thing about his research is that shows a 6 to 12 month improvement in metabolic function. I mean, you might not be in ketosis for the next year, going back on carbohydrates, but your body's ability to burn fat for fuel is there. And as far as systemic inflammation, a lot of the markers you'll see in a blood panel, the greater the blood panel, the more that it shows, the more benefit you're going to see, because everything's impacted in a positive way from that form of fasting. Pretty much, I mean, you guys know the Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung and Jimmy Moore?
I know, I've seen Jason Fung's stuff, but I haven't read it.
He's awesome. Yeah, it's a great book. I mean, the cliff notes of it is all forms of fasting work. Whether you're doing 12-12, 16-8, 20-4, like, it doesn't matter how you cut it, from an intermittent standpoint to water fast, and I don't think they dive too much into dry fasting in that, but the point is they all work, they all have value, you know. So it's just a matter of like, how can I say yes to doing that? And I think the benefit of the fasting mimicking is that you have the ability to still eat, you know, have your cake and eat it too, almost, right? Like you still get some calories each night, you don't lose sleep, or as bad if you're doing like a true water fast or a dry fast, you're not going to sleep 2 nights into it. Your body's like, hey, you're starving, it's time to go out and forage, right? And that's intelligently designed that way. But with the fasting mimicking, I think it's a great bridge for a lot of people who have never done a fast, because then they still have something, they still get to get their sleep on, and the benefits do last. It's something, you know, that, you know, we should go without for a little bit. All of our ancestors did every winter, you know, like it wasn't just fucking grab it at the grocery store, bananas coming in from Panama, like that's just not how it works. So if we can rekindle that at least periodically, there's tremendous benefit there. And I've seen that, you know, my blood work is like, it's on a whole different level since starting to do that in this last year. Before and after blood work with Ways to Well, it's just like, damn, I was already healthy, and now I'm seeing it looks just better and better and better.
When you're fasting, are you really particular about maybe mixing in things like bone broth or sodium or electrolytes, or how do you think about that stuff with the fast?
Yeah, we do a number of things for the group, because a lot of people are coming from different places on their health journey, you know, so we want to make sure that we're making damn sure everyone can finish the thing and not get hurt. We've got a nurse on staff doing vitamin IVs and lactated ringers with electrolytes, glutathione, all sorts of shit to optimize and help them detox. But typically, it's not as big of a deal when you're doing the fasting mimicking because you're still getting, like we use sea salt macadamias. I'm getting a lot of salt there. There's potassium in the nuts, and the girls get berries and different things mixed in so that way you don't throw off the monthly cycle. We don't want to take a step back to take 2 steps forward.
Yeah.
You know, and with that, higher carbohydrate content in theirs, they're still entering ketosis easily by day 3. We're still entering ketosis together. We haven't seen people cramp. We're not doing a whole lot during that. You know, like guys like Peter Attia, who's a buddy of mine, you know, he'll do 7-day water fast once a quarter, and he likes to lift heavy while he's doing it. I'm like, you're a fucking animal. I don't do shit. Yeah. Like, I might do some easy strength stuff and just move my body and open it up, but I'm not trying to break down muscle tissue while I'm fasting either. Yeah. So, you know, we meet people where they're at. I don't think, you know, like there's one guy they talked about, a complete guide to fasting, who he's the longest ever recorded fast. He did 386 days. He started off at over 400 pounds. And it was just water initially, and then they moved into bone broth and different salts and things like that. But medically supervised, he did it over a year. And when he finished, he had lost all this weight. He was down to like 185, I want to say. You could see his abs, but his skin pulled back in because the body was intelligently reconsuming itself, and you didn't have stretch marks. So it's remarkable to think that you can accomplish that, right? If you don't need a tummy tuck. All these guys on The Biggest Loser, you're getting tummy tucks, stuff like that. They have all these skin that folds because they lost the weight too quick. Right. So that was a cool thing reading about that. But really with us, it's about getting the right nutrients in. We do sauna and ice bath during that event. So we work with my buddy at Upgraded Formulas. They do like nano-sized minerals, and there's no calories. It's kind of like concentration mineral drops, but way more potent. And so we'll add in zinc and selenium and different things that potentiate hormone function, just because we're kind of burning the candle at both ends by fasting with the hot and cold therapy. For a lot of people, that's brand new to them. You know, so to introduce it all in 1 week, it can be a lot. And just making sure that we're putting back in kind of what we're sweating out, because you do sweat much more than sodium. That's an important one.
It's almost like that experience helps people dig out of that metabolic hole that they've been in for a long time, just through the cold plunge, the sauna, who was it, Dr. Mary Care that we had on? She'd actually be an awesome guest for you. She's out of Dallas. She's a board certified MD, and I think she has a holistic health clinic. And one of the things she talks about is with clients, she'll do like a 4 to 8 hour fast with bone broth and ghee, I think. And the whole purpose of that is just like dig you out of that metabolic hole that you've been in, do it for 48 hours, and then she'll start to think about changing her diet and everything. But she does a lot of talk about like optimizing male testosterone and how sperm count's like the lowest it's ever been in recorded history. So it's just really interesting stuff.
Yeah, she sounds rad.
She's awesome. She's awesome. How much of the fasting, you mentioned Paul Chek, like spiritual guy, physical guy, how much of the fasting, cold plunge, sauning is that spiritual element? Because we both do it all the time.
I mean, it's all of it, right? You guys know once you get there. We call that event the full temple reset, because your body is your temple, right? So we're going to reset metabolism. We're going to reset inflammation. We're going to reset our control over what we put in our body. We reset the mental emotional. That's why Godsy's there. He's a Jungian analyst, studied Jung extensively in college, and that's also why he's one of the premier coaches, along with me and Aubrey and Caitlin, for Fit for Service. Just a wealth of knowledge to dive into very basic principles of habit change in all aspects of life. We move it further into Dispenza's work with manifestation and things like that, but also we close out with a sound healing ceremony, because as you're fasting in and of itself is a ceremony. Like all the amount of work your body does to process food on a daily basis is just behind the scenes. You're like, as long as I'm eating good, I don't feel like it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And when you relieve yourself from that work, the mind can just expand, and it sees things that it normally doesn't see. It's able to pay attention, and the aha moments, the synchronicities start to line up. And I think in that space, if we utilize time in nature, time in solitude, time to meditate, which we learned from Emily Fletcher's Ziva meditation during the program, that all gives us the opportunity to really take ownership of finding where my center is, and then knowing if I'm off center, how do I fucking get back there, right? And so that really is an important piece. But yeah, I mean, the first time you're in an ice bath, you might be like, look, it's cold, look, it's cold. But the second you're able to slow your breathing and drop in, it's the deepest silence.
Yeah.
It's the deepest sentence.
Yeah.
You know, you're just there. It's like,
Yeah.
fuck, it took me 40 seconds
Yeah.
to go as deep as a 2-hour meditation would take, you know? And that as an access point is super important. When we can find that in the sauna, you know, you're in there, we got one out here, actually, it used to be that smoker, it's right there in the parking lot. It'll go to 230 degrees. Like the last 3 to 5 minutes in that thing, they're not fun, you know? They're not fun at all.
No.
But if you can find your center there, you can do it anywhere. So when the you know, Klaus Schwabs of the world start announcing what they're going to do next, it's like, find my center. You know, I can handle this.
Yeah. So you have your protocol, like if shit hits the fan or you mentally feel out of it, you're like, hey, cold plunge, sauna, eat well, fast, and you kind of have like your routine to get you back on track. Right?
Most of this stuff, I mean, it really boils down to like, what are the subtlest changes I can make? You know, so I think meditation is the tool for that. There's a mantra meditation that we learned from Emily that is, it stems from the Vedic meditations like transcendental meditation, but it's less regimented as TM. And she teaches all this online too at zivameditation.com, something like that. I don't know, but she's absolutely incredible. She's one of my favorite teachers I've ever come across. She was a Broadway actress for many years, singing, dancing. She's gorgeous. She can convey the message really well. She spent years in India, you know, getting this level of being able to teach it for herself. But having that as an access point is you know, twice a day, 20 minutes is what that's what you work up to. You do twice a day for 5 minutes, if that's all you got, but you use the mantra to guide you back to your center. Quiet, 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 quiet. And that to me is the subtle shift, right? I want to make a subtle shift. All the other stuff, the sauna, the ice bath, the lifting weights, all that stuff needs to be a part of a healthy program because that's what we're designed to do. It's preventative. That's healthcare, right? The other shit's sick care. This is healthcare. Healthcare is doctor movement, doctor quiet, meditation and sleep, doctor diet, what you're putting in your body, supplements, all that stuff, water, and doctor happiness. What's your life's mission? And how do you find joy in every moment, right? Those 4 doctors that Paul Chek teaches, that's the preventative. That's the last 4 doctors you'll ever need. That's why I titled it that, right?
Yeah.
You follow those 4 doctors, you don't ever need to see a doctor again.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The meditation is something that I think a lot of people overlook. Like I started doing it during COVID. I downloaded Headspace, started paying for that. Just a simple way to start meditating, like 5 minutes a day, and then you start like craving it. It's like it's almost like eating right and fasting and working out, and you start to realize the little things that you're like avoiding doing that are positive to your life just because you are spending time with yourself at the most important points in the day, morning and night, meditating and just like getting your thoughts in line. Like so many people overlook it. And I remember too, like the first time I did it, I'm sitting here like, this is the goofiest shit I've ever done. Like, what am I doing? And then you do it like a week and you're like, okay, my temperament is changing because of the work I'm doing here. So it's one of those things that I think it's like low-hanging fruit, but people just avoid doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's low-hanging fruit, but you don't really grab it till you get it. And one of the things that Shervin Jaffariat told me on the podcast is like the biggest component, if there's one word that you boil down to any transformation or habit change or anything where you want to, I should do this, I want to do that, those kind of things, it's momentum.
Yeah. It's
how much momentum do you have carrying you along? Because, you know, I can now, like if my son wants deep dish pizza flown in from Chicago for his birthday, I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
There's no craving for that afterwards.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh God, when's the next time we're gonna have pizza? What's the next birthday party? Neither one of us say that.
Yeah.
We get real food more often than not. And in that real food, we're satiated. We feel good. It tastes good. We look forward to it. I mean, half the time, my son wants grass-finished burgers.
Yeah.
You know? He wants grass-finished burgers with goat cheese. That's what he wants. Like 4 nights a week, probably.
That's incredible.
You know, so like knowing that allows me, the momentum allows me to take a slip up and just not even break stride. You know, if I miss a night's sleep because something's going on with the kids or some shit hits the fan and I'm up all night thinking about it work-wise, it's just one night. I'm not going to lose a week. You know, I'm not going to go off the wagon and have a cheat meal turn into a cheat week. It just doesn't work that way because I have too much momentum bringing me that direction. So really, you know, the habit change. There's an old Lou Holtz football quote that I love to use. It's life is how does it go? Yard by yard, life is hard. Inch by inch, life's a cinch. And so when you think about that, it's just these little baby steps in the right direction. You know, and it's not trying to do everything all at once. A lot of people come to, you know, Fit for Service or any of these things and they want to change it all now. And it's like, no, What's the most desirable thing? What do you think that is? Just sit and listen to that. All right, food's it. Or no, it's sleep. I got to master sleep. All right, and then you see how all these things interconnect, you know, from what you eat to how you sleep to how you feel, all that stuff. But it's just starting to take whatever is the first thing that's on your agenda. It's different for everybody. It might be meditation for some because you already lift weights and you already do these other things. You know, for other people who've been avid yogis and, you know, they live in a certain way, they might need some meat or they might need to work out more. You know, it is different for everybody, but seeing what that one thing is that's shining, you know, James Clear talked about that too when, maybe it wasn't James Clear, I think it was Greg McKeown in Essentialism, phenomenal book. He said when the Greek word priority was invented, it was just that, priority. It was not a list of shit to do, it was one fucking thing that mattered, right? What is the one thing that matters? That's your priority. And nothing else exists until the priority's met. When everything after the priority is bonus material, right? So if you can get laser-like singular focus on the single priority that you're going to change that, live that for at least 3 weeks, then you can add the next priority, right? And just work your way through like that. It's piece by piece.
And I feel like most people know deep down what that one thing is too, right? It's like you almost know in your gut instinct. And I think you're talking about James Clear. One of the things I was thinking about was he mentions in his book too, just never miss twice. So it's like you go off your diet, like take the morality out of it. Like let's think about things in terms of numbers. If you're eating, you know, 14 to 21 meals a week and you cheat a couple times, or you go off your diet a couple times, you're still going to make a ton of progress. Like don't get upset at yourself and then go off the rails. Like literally just get back on track. It's fine. Like take the emotion out of it almost.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the best teaching in meditation too. Like your mind's going to work. And he says you're to say that you're going to have a quiet mind in meditation is like, I'm going to lower my resting heart rate to 0. It's like, no, that happens when you die. Your mind stops thinking when you die. There's no point where the mind stops doing its job. It's like trying to stop your heart. So it's not a matter of judging yourself when a thought comes in. It's a recollection of the mantra that brings you back away from the thought. Right? Mantra, 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 and then space. Right? Thought emerges, mantra, 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 space. So it's understanding that without judgment that allows you to keep going. You know, if you feel like, oh fuck, I'm a fat loser, now I'm gonna eat this whole tub of ice cream, and oh damn it, I ate the whole tub of ice cream. You know, and then you go back to the grocery store and you're a little fungi into you, and he's like telling you to buy more ice cream. You're like, oh, I'm not gonna do it. All right, I did it. That's okay too. You know? I've worked with a number of people who have sweet tooths, and they're like, damn, how long? That was 20 years ago when I had a sweet tooth. Damn, like I almost forgot what that was like, and then I remembered. I was like, oh, okay, well let's think of some other ways we can shift that. There are 3 different ketogenic ice creams you can have, and even though they're not great for your gut, they're still going to be way better for your metabolic health than getting a ton of sugar. And you know, supplementing that stuff. Quest Nutrition has a really cool logo for their protein bars, which also give you gas. It's cheap clean, right? Cheap clean. If I'm gonna eat bad, if I make the meal, you know, whatever that is, if I have French toast at my house on organic sourdough with fucking real organic maple syrup, my blood sugar doesn't skyrocket. It's different than going to Denny's or something like that. It's a different feel inside the body and outside. And I think if we can, you know, take the time to prepare our own food and then find these little things that might be our cheat snack that's still clean, that's going to serve us a lot better and start to give us that power over what we put in our bodies.
Have you made ice cream with raw milk before?
Fuck yeah.
How good is that?
It is so good. There's
We had some yesterday, but we were talking about this. It's like the way that we make it, raw milk, raw cream, maple syrup, honey, maybe like vanilla extract, whatever you want to throw in there. We threw in a little cold brew. It's like, that's literally a health food. Like, that's gains right there. Isn't that That's incredible?
My wife's making a chocolate mousse. It's kind of like a thick pudding with regenerative collagen and a whole host of, you know, the full mushroom suite, you know, so you get turkey tail and cordyceps and also, it's a superfood. You know, like it really is. And there's probably like, you know, a dozen egg yolks in there, all free range egg yolks. You know, you start doing things like that, and it's like, oh, here's my sweet tooth, but it's also loaded with everything my body wants. You know, like I feed my kids that, and like, yes, that choline's going right into your brain right now. Like you're getting a ton of brain support from eating that chocolate dessert, so-called, you know?
It goes into like finding that balance. One of the things I was interested in asking you about is the community element of everything you're doing. Not to steer in a different direction completely, but you started out as an athlete, football player, then you were in the UFC at AKA training there, and then you had Onnit and the stuff you're doing now with Fit for Service. Seems like community has played a huge role in everything you do. Is that something that you are like, one of your core tenets in terms of something you believe in?
It has to be, right?
Yeah.
When you think of like the top-down control of a one-world government, doomsday, great reset, what does that look like in reverse? That is completely decentralized, locally strong, united communities that thrive and can provide for themselves. So understanding that, and really that's the thing I was missing when football ended, right? I felt like a damn hamster on the wheel anytime I'd go for a run or lift weights at 24 Hour Fitness because I was alone. I didn't have 100 guys screaming, get it up, go, like that's a different feel. So like thinking of that was a huge lifelong lesson that actually drove me into fighting. Where do I have that camaraderie? Where do I have the brotherhood? Where do I have the sisterhood going forward? And we're all, especially in the last 2 years, we're searching for our people. We're searching for people that are like-minded, that see the world differently, that want to work towards that, or we're seeking people that see the world as the narrative says, and we're jumping in their camp. Either way, that's really where we see this push, but it's a push for belonging. And as we drive towards that, we can build community up. It's going to look different. I got a buddy of mine who's been on the podcast, Joyce Hart, who's starting a conscious community. He's done it several times in the past. There's a number of them that already exist in Costa Rica and Bali and different pockets on Earth. And, there's pros and cons to that too. I'm not saying that that's the route for everybody, but that's one way to do it. Another way to do that is to just, go to your farmers markets and get to know where your food comes from. It's little things like that. And it's building a tribe around yourself. Your Ohana is your chosen family. And when you know that I've got a good group of people that have my back and I've got their back, and you support each other in more ways than just lending an ear, then you start to build something that transcends, our typical, I got my work buddies, I got my drinking buddies, I got my this and that, my Yahoo fantasy football team friends. Like these are people that I can count on. And what's cool about having this farm is we've seen so many of them come out the woodwork to help and volunteer. You helped and volunteered that. It takes community to run a thing like that. So community to me shows up in many different ways with what we're doing here. Initially, I was on the band, of trying to get as many awesome people living on the same plot of land as possible. And then over time, I've really come to think of that as like, it's going to be pretty hard to do, to get a bunch of people that are willing to move, that can move, that agree to the tenets, that want to live in a certain way. That's tough. Dominer, I think, is one of the longest large-scale communities doing that in northern Italy. They have 1,000+ people living there. They do all their own food. They do all their own education, all their own artwork. And that takes, systems in place that are working and doing very well. I'm not sure we're going to see that pop up stateside as much, but we are seeing people that are like, hey, we're getting a house in Dripping Springs. Move close. All right, I'm getting one down the street from you guys. When people start to build out that way they still have ownership of something, rather than just buying into somebody else's thing. And that can be powerful too. But this farm works on a number of ways with the community. We're trying to obviously be in farmers markets. There's a couple really good places like Boggy Creek Farm in Austin that sells from pretty much every local vendor in Texas. The best goat cheese, the best honey, the best this, the best that. And what's cool is they sell it for the farmer, right? Like you don't have to set up a stand there and hang out all day on a Saturday. They're there 5 days a week, they're open, and they'll sell your stuff at a fee, right? So that's one way to integrate the food we grow into the people and build community. Another way is donating to food banks. Like I grew up on Spam and mac and cheese. We couldn't afford any of this stuff. I laugh when Bear turns down like grass-finished tenderloin. I'm like, dude, we got one hot dog. At least he wants a grass-finished hot dog, but still, it's like, damn, dude. So just understanding that we want to bridge that gap for all people. Like if you can't afford it, cool. If you're living off fucking food stamps, I want you to have the best food possible. And it's we're not gonna provide for the whole city of Austin, but we can provide a lot. And one of the reasons we selected such a tiny piece of this 118 acres to do the farm on is because most people that come here, they're like, we could never do this. And like, no, you actually can. Like, there's plenty of places you buy at 5 acres. We're utilizing less than 5 acres of this right now.
Right.
And we've got 1,000 plants in the ground. They're going to produce way more than any one of us needs, you know, including all the volunteers. Like it was hard to give enough of the cucumbers away when they started coming in.
Yeah.
So there's pieces like that that are ways that we seed out in the community. You know, when you look at the world and you think of all the systems that are breaking and failing, from finance to education, the industrial military complex, all these things, what are the ways in which we enrich? And it's different for everybody. Some person's going to have the passion of cleaning up plastic in the ocean. Some person's going to have the passion of finding clean energy. That's all right, you know, and it's what you're called to do. You know, what is alive in you? That's the place you should be. You know, like food's a big one for us. There's no doubt about that. So I think, you know, getting my hands in the soil was the next inevitable turn for me. But for a lot of people, it's not, you don't have to start your own farm or any of that stuff, but do know your farmers, do know where your food comes from, and go direct if you can, you know, because shit's going to get weirder and weirder. I can guarantee that. Like, there's no doubt.
Yeah, that's one of the things we talk about all the time. There's that statistic that's gotten a lot more mainstream, how I think it's 4 packers control 80 to 90% of all meat that's consumed in the grocery store. So the chances are if you're eating meat from a supermarket, it's touched by one of these massive packers that's overcharging you, and they're undercharging the rancher too. So like, the best thing you can do for you and your family's health and also budget is to have a local farmer like you're talking about, or grow the food on your own. We're just curious, when did you start to develop that hyper localized approach to eating? Because I think you're a big hunter too, right? Was it through that, or was it something else?
Well, hunting, you know, has been a big part of it for sure. But you know, I'll hunt in Hawaii, and it's I like that meat just the same.
Yeah.
As far as purchasing local and things like that, that becomes, you know, people talk shipping and stuff like that. Like, how do you get rid of the shipping issue? Well, fucking drive and pick it up, right? And more regenerative farms are starting to pop up. A lot of people are, you know, the tide is shifting in a certain sense. Maybe not might not happen overnight, but one of the most important pieces they said in Food Inc. was you vote with your dollar,
100%.
right? Like, so that's it. So I mean, when I was fighting and living in my mom's garage and working at a strip club twice a week just to pay the bills, we couldn't afford filet mignon. We couldn't afford any of this stuff. What we could afford was grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. So I'd buy that in bulk. I'd go a quarter, you know, in on a quarter cow with my dad and a couple other people. You know, split a cow up. I'm taking all grind. That's it. You know, and then I've got, you know, 6 months worth of meat. There's little things like that that actually make a big difference. And coming out here to Texas 5 years ago, I got hooked up with the guys at Rome Ranch pretty quick. And started taking my son out there, and you know, they're doing some of the best stuff in regenerative agriculture. They're absolutely phenomenal, and we've been able to witness, you know, a couple different harvests. I had my son when he was 4 sit on my lap, and at 20 yards, this animal came out and presented itself after we had done a 7 directions prayer. Like the whole herd's there off in the distance, and the one that we're going to take peels away from the herd and stops right in front of us.
Wow.
20 yards, and the rancher shot her right in the head. She fell over, and my son was 20 yards away watching this whole thing happen. So the connection to food is real at that point, you know, and like going over, laying tobacco down and praying for the animal, thanking the animal with gratitude. Like, he got to experience that. That's one of the most important pieces we can come across if we eat meat, is having that connection to our food. But the eat local thing is super important too, because we're taking in the environment. We're taking in the sunlight at the location where the sun is hitting us. We're taking in the moonlight, all the cosmic energy that's there from Steiner's work. That's all embedded in the local food. One of my buddies, Dr. David E. Martin, he talked about how the camels in northern Siberia, they will eat grass all the way down to the root, and it's like it's a really salty soil there, and they'll get some of that salt in their mouth, and they can go, you know, a very long time without water. And they drink hundreds of gallons in one sitting, you know, but like they intelligently eat every piece of that, and they know to eat every piece of that, because that's what's giving them the ground, the air, the water, all of the elements that allow them to survive in that particular region.
So cool.
You know, if I'm in Thailand, I'm gonna eat Thai food. I'm not trying to go to find a fucking American restaurant in Thailand for that same reason. And I think that's an important piece to reconnect to, is we're eating much more than macros. We're eating much more than vitamins and minerals. Like, we're eating sunlight, we're eating the water, we're from the rainwater, from the pond, whatever's feeding that thing, that's what we're eating. And considering, you know, the interconnectivity of all things, like when you start diving into Rudolf Steiner, you're like, damn, this dude was ultra deep, and he was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and all of his stuff that he laid out for people has stood the test of time. We've seen it work for 100 years in biodynamics. And I think that's pretty exciting, and that's obviously, that's one of the next big chunks of education that I'm going to be pulling in for myself and the team here.
Yeah. Are you guys going to have an educational component out here? Because it's like, seems like the perfect place for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the farm itself is a nonprofit, but one of the ways that we plan on generating income to continue projects is through education.
Nice.
And as of right now, it's all the things I want to learn. You know, it's like you podcast.
Yeah,
Like, I want to talk to this guy. I want to ask him a bunch of questions that I want to know, and hopefully the listeners like it. You know, that's exactly why I do it. And we've got Taylor from Rome Ranch hooked us up with their butcher. He does great field butching, and he's also a master at preserving meat organically through. He's got like 15 different pemmican recipes. So you're making like Native American pemmican. You're using all sorts of stuff: the herbs that are in season, dehydrated berries and fruit that's in season. And so you're getting your meat, you're getting tallow, you're getting fat, and you're getting all the antioxidants and colors of the rainbow from whatever was in season at the time that you harvest. So your to-go bag has everything in it.
It's incredible. You're a big pemmican guy.
Yeah. So that's one of the first educational pieces I want to do here. We're going to be building a root cellar and bringing in experts there on food preservation and how to, when we build the root center, we're going to have a team here of people for education that are going to learn and do it with us.
That's right.
It's like every little step that we do, we want to be inclusive in that and just seed that information out there. The more people that understand this stuff and start to think in unique ways around how we solve food issues, the better.
Yeah, one of the things all three of us have in common is we've been out to the Rome Ranch Harvest too, which for us was this amazing educational experience. Not because we're sitting there and reading a textbook, but you get out and, like you said, have that spiritual connection with the animal. You get to listen to Taylor and Katie's story, how they're restoring the soil quality. It must have been insane seeing that experience through your son's eyes too, just getting to appreciate eating the animal and the death and the whole process of it.
Yeah, he watched me help me field dress, right? Like, so they had to load this female bison wasn't that big, but she was still. He took a tractor to lift her up from the ankle with a fork to let her bleed out, and then I started going to work, taking off her coat. We kept her coat, ate the liver, the heart, all that good stuff, and but like getting in on there, like it's an animal that you can't imagine is that big. So you just saw elephants out in Fredericksburg last weekend, and it's like they're 8,000 pounds. To be in the presence of something like that. You guys know Boyd Vardy, Lion Trekker's Guide to Life?
No.
Oh God, you gotta know him.
Oh, actually, I think I saw it at Kuya. It's out on Kuya. Yeah.
He spoke at Kuya. He's become a buddy of mine. I met through my close friend Cal, and his book, The Lion Trekker's Guide to Life, is amazing. It's only 3 hours, like a Rogan episode on Audible, and he really speaks to that, like the shift that takes place when you're face to face with something that can kill you. Whether that's an herbivore or not, like a bison can destroy you, an elephant can kill you. And like that face-to-face interaction draws you back into something that's primal. It's a way to reconnect ourselves to the deeper tapestry that is life. And, Bear's interaction with that, you can't quantify it, but even for Wolf, she was in Tasha's womb when we got that animal. So like that's what built her body for the first 7 years of her life was a lot of that came from this animal. That's a pretty cool thing to think about that.
Yeah, and we're so devoid from that connection too. We talk about it all the time, right? It's like 99% of people, they're used to just going to a grocery store, you pick up some piece of meat that's neatly cut, it's in a plastic wrapper, you're devoid of all connection. And then you go to these experiences like the harvest, and for your son, it's like you're seeing the head of the bison get chopped off, and then you see the organs and the liver and all that stuff. The liver that's the best liver I've ever had, by the way. I think Taylor threw a little Maldon on it. It was insane.
Crazy.
But just for your kids to have that connection, because I remember for us after we went to it, it's like here they send you home with a Ziploc bag full of organ meat and ground beef and everything, and we were just saying, I can't believe that meat in your fridge was alive 12 hours ago or whatever. It's just a different level of connection that most people don't have. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a special deal. You guys were at the last one with Zach Bush and everybody. I missed that one because of all the gangbuster stuff we were doing here at the farm. But it was like, what a rad event that has everyone in the space that you want to learn from.
And we're like, we're coming at it from a completely different perspective. Like we didn't grow up as ranchers. We just want to get involved with what's happening. So just being able to show up to that and like talk to Zach Bush, talk to Will Harris. These guys have been doing it generationally, decades. It was such a cool experience. And I mean, Katie and Taylor do a great job just trying to break everything down for everyone. So they've got it. They're doing it right out there.
Yeah, big time. I'm super happy. We actually have 20. We got 20 fertile eggs from them for turkeys.
Really? Oh,
so
sweet.
We're getting the Rum Ranch turkeys right here.
Yeah.
And they hatched. I think we've got 15 now. A couple didn't hatch and a couple passed, but 15 turkeys that are getting ready to go out into the 9 acres there, and that'll be the little guardians for the chickens, protecting from hawks. We got a couple donkeys in there, and we're going to get some emus and just some different things. Really, that's going to be like the bird haven.
Yeah.
Ducks and geese, and thinking of that, like we're building an ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, well, I want chicken eggs. Cool. How do you protect the chickens? Do I stand out with a gun and shoot whatever comes out? No, that's not right.
Yeah.
Will a raccoon run away from a donkey? Probably. If not, will it run away from an emu?
Yeah.
If it can, right? An
Yeah.
emu will fuck it up. So that will deter predators from taking our stuff, and it's preventative, but it also works with the ecosystem in that you have all these different varieties of poop. We talked about that in Biggest Little Farm, like how important it was to have that one big pig just to mix up the microbiota that's going into the soil. It's a unique animal that has a totally different flavor of what it's going to give back to the earth. And so I've really been diving into that, the plant and animal husbandry, and what do we want to work with? Like, these are ultimately all going to be a part of our family. The donkeys are our family, the chickens are our family. We raised them in our house in Austin. We got them 2 day old, 2 days after they hatched, and most of them have names. We fucking know them all. They know my kids. My little dog, I wanted him to grow up with them so he wouldn't attack them, and so like he's watched them since they were little babies. He treats them like little babies, even though they're bigger than him now. If they peck him in the nose, he just lays down for them. He's non-aggressive. That's an important piece to have there, but he's still a protector for everyone at the same time.
Yeah, I know one of the things you mentioned when we were out touring the property, I think you said that Aubrey purchased the property, was it the fall of last year?
Yep.
Right? So how much, it's a tough question to answer, but how much do you feel like you personally just learned about land stewardship, just being out here and through all the trial and error?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you expect learning from great people, and I've been connected to some great people. We're connected to Chad Johnson, who's been kind of the heart and soul behind this permaculture mission here, and he was an understudy of Sepp Holzer. So a lot of the stuff we were doing in real time, I didn't necessarily understand the why. Like, I was grabbing pieces of it, and then I read Desert or Paradise from Sepp Holzer, and I understood. Like, there's fucking 80 pages on water alone in that book. There's 7 chapters. That one is like half the book.
Yeah.
All the rest are much shorter. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. And so it's some stuff I'm learning as I go, and then my mind can catch up to it later when I understand the science behind it and why that is such an important piece to it. And other things are feel, there's certain things, like I've wanted donkeys. We've had, even before 2 of our chickens got nabbed, I want donkeys. They're awesome, and they're great, and they're fun. And they're also great protectors. My wife would send me Instagram videos of donkeys just fucking chasing down and murking a fox. Lifting it up in the air, turning on its front 2 hooves and blasting it like a pro wrestler with its hind feet. Like shit like that. And it's like, that's cool. These are our little linebacker guardians out here,
It's like DC.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so much to learn now. It was daunting at first in saying, like, we're going to do this with the amount of education I felt like I still needed to get. One of the things that helped me with that was knowing that there are experts that have been in the game for decades, and they're available. Like, we can learn from them. We can, if we have enough money, we can have them help us design and build something together. There's things like that actually really do help. And if you educate yourself, these books, which I'm kind of doing in reverse order, that can be something that you can gather all on your own. So, for a couple $100 and 10 books, you can do the whole thing without that. And you still have stuff you're going to learn along the way. We're talking about sprinklers not being designed to handle the Texas heat, so they loosen up and expand in the heat, and then that loses, you lose pressure throughout the sprinkler, and you're not getting some stuff water. We lost a few trees from one of the zones not getting pumped properly. That was a big mistake. You know, it was probably a $400 mistake. But at the same time, you know, these are the growing pains that help us to learn and make sure that everything's perfect going through with it.
Yeah.
And I think we had some grace watching Biggest Little Farm.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, these guys had the fucking kitchen sink thrown at them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but you make it to that 7-year mark, and you've hopefully built the thing in a way where it is self-organizing, it's self-healing, and everything's in balance and right relation. And that's really what we're inching towards.
Yeah, that was my first thought walking out there, was like, this looks like Biggest Little Farm, like with the landscape and how it's all designed. Was that an inspiration for you guys?
It was a huge inspiration. I mean, there's been documentaries that come out where, like, Food Inc. was one of the first ones, you know, after I'd read How to Eat and Be Healthy, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is the visual of How to Eat and Be Healthy. Obviously, How to Eat and Be Healthy goes well beyond food. But the visual of that's important. You know, when you see, like, the chickens that can't move and they fall over and they fucking still get put on the meat grinder, you know, they've been just rotting there. You're like, dude, I can't eat Tyson chicken.
Right.
You know, I just can't I won't do it, period. Sometimes a visual, you know, pictures speak 1,000 words, right? So I think that visual is an important component. Looking out to this farm, you know, like the Biggest Little Farm, we knew, like, we have 118 acres. Even if we burnt the whole thing down and started new, it still would be half their size. You know, but that's not what we wanted to do. I was telling you guys, we're bringing in exotic animals, and we're going to be trimming trees and thinning stuff out and actually harmonizing the ecosystem in the way that bison would have done. You know, like, bison will eat saplings and rub their shoulders on branches that force the trees to grow up and out, that keeps grasses coming back and regenerating the soil. Without bison or you know, larger animals going across this land doing that for us, it's something we're going to have to do by hand. You know, we're likely going to utilize goats to help eat away the brush and different things like that in rotated pastures. But as far as the little thing that we're doing on the 9 acres, I mean, it's mind-blowing to see how much you can produce on such a small amount of land. I mean, it really is. Like, we have way more than we could ever eat or use or preserve.
So cool.
So that extra, you know, there's a great guy, you guys have probably heard of him, named Ice Age Farmer.
Okay.
He's got a YouTube channel, Ice Age Farmer. He's awesome. And he's been big into, you know, kind of the global game that's being played from Schwab and these guys. But he has very real practical things. He said one of the things we need to do is produce more than we consume. We're never going to stop being consumers. We always need to consume, but to be in right relation, we produce more than we consume. And that can be in a variety of ways. It could be with food, it could be with education, it could be with anything. But it's giving back more than you're taking. And I think that's a fundamental piece as we step into the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. It's an actual requirement that we do.
Yeah, one of the things that we loved, and I'm sure you're probably friends with him, the Tucker Max's article on Doomer Optimism, we had him on the podcast probably like 2 months ago, and he does such a good job. Like, he doesn't tell you how to think, he just says, hey, this is what I see coming and this is how I'm preparing for it. From your perspective, like if you're talking to someone in their 20s that maybe is from the city and doesn't have a lot of tactical skills, how do you think that they should be, what skills do you think they should think about preparing going forward?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question.
Tucker's a good buddy. We're in a freedom chat on Signal. The articles that get sent through there on a daily basis are not fun to watch or read. Yeah, I mean, just on the tactical side alone, you know, like what is security? You know, all this shit in the last 2 years has been around security, safety. This is how we create safety through control. No. That's not how you do it, you know, it's not, and it isn't, it's ultimately an illusion. I could have, you know, 100 ARs and you know, 100,000 rounds of ammunition. I'm still not going to outgun the military, right? So education, community are still the forefront, right? Tucker does talk about that. Who are your people? That's number one for safety and security. Knowing where you're going to get your food, knowing a guy who can fix your car, you know, having extra, right? Like I was listening to a guy on Rogan's who was talking about, I forget his name. He was writing a book, poking fun at you know, these war closets and you know, the doomsday preppers.
Yeah, right.
He was poking fun at preppers, and the more he researched to write this book, the more he understood. Like, oh, like anything else, it's not black and white. There's actually a lot of bandwidth here that's gray, and a lot of this makes a shit ton of sense. Every culture throughout history has always prepped for a long, hard winter. All of them until now. You know, and I think of, you know, that's going to look different for people than some guy who's got his nuke thing built underground.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's the route you need to go, but some prepping, some saving, some tangible stuff that actually would matter if grocery stores closed, I think is the utmost importance right now.
Yeah.
And you guys have seen, I'm sure you've even tweeted about it, the how many meat processing plants went up in flames in the last 2 years. And these are big companies too. They're big and small, but they're just I think one of the tweets, somebody had stated every previous fire in a meat processing plant later was found to be arson. Everyone's stating now when they say all these are going up, like still under investigation. It's like, let me connect the dots for you. Somebody is fucking burning all of the meat processing plants to control food. We've seen the ports being slowed down for what? This invisible enemy that's not killing very many people. Still, to this day, we're seeing that happen to delay things, to cause supply chain issues. So there's a lot, when you dig deep enough that you understand it is manufactured supply chain issues. There's a lot of manufactured shit that's happening by design. And when you reverse it, you can spend all day there and get really dark and depressed and try to figure out, well, what the fuck can I do? There's actually a lot you can do, and it comes down to, can I provide for myself? What can I provide for myself? What can I not? And who do I need to know that can provide that for me? That is the basics of how you work to build community and barter with people, where you can trade evenly skill sets for goods or goods for goods, but you build those relationships so that I know, like, hey, if I need it, I can get a cow, I can go get a bison leg, I can do little things to keep my family alive. That helps me sleep at night. That helps me worry less about the next thing that's going to blow up, or the next boogeyman that's going to get released, and then global lockdowns again, monkeypox, or whatever the fuck they're talking about next. It's something that allows me to keep pushing forward and keep spreading the good word and really thinking and dreaming into, what do I want this next phase of human to look like? What do I want? Is it man merged with AI? Is it transhuman? Are we going to fucking genetically alter people so they're 3 foot tall and we have no less carbon impact, right? Like these are real conversations that are happening, right? And they all keep circling back on that great reset, transhumanism, these different agendas that have been in place for a really long time, unfortunately. But again, there always is a practical. There's a thing that I can do for me. The first and foremost, the most important thing is to not live in fear, right? If you're in fear, you're not going to see things clearly, you're not going to think clearly, and you make irrational, hasty decisions. When I find my center and I can find calm and peace inside, then I can think clearly, then I have expanded awareness. And I can say, oh shit, maybe I should put some more food in my backyard, even though I only have 1/10 of an acre.
Right.
The benefit of that is you have really awesome organic food that you grew, right? Like we planted a banana tree 2 years ago, and it's got bananas on it now. And like my kids are batshit crazy. Every day we walk out, like, oh, there's 4 more bananas. Oh wow, they're growing bigger. Oh, look at the flowers on the bananas. Like things like that. Like that. So when your kids are into that, or you're into that, it's a palpable feeling to watch progress take place and to know, like, do I have enough bananas for the year? No, I'm not going to pretend that I do, but I have some, right? And I have a connection to nature at that point. And, I know that's a long-winded answer, but just thinking back to tactical, there are things you can do for that. Many people listening to this probably don't even have a gun. If you go to Sheepdog Response, and you can do virtual training if you can't make it to a live one. If you can afford it, go to a live training. I've trained with Special Forces guys for years. When I was fighting in the UFC, we do like goodwill tours for the troops, USO style. And I get to hang out with a lot of special ops guys and shoot a ton of cool guns and things like that and get pointers from the best of the best. But going through that program with Tim, who is one of the best, fought in the UFC, he's a special ops guy, like he's amazing. He's amazing as an instructor, and he's surrounded himself by more amazing people. And what you learn in those 3 days, you don't unlearn, right? You got to stay sharp, you got to practice, but those are things that give me at least a sense of well-being. Like no one's barging into my house at night. No one's going to hurt my family. My wife's going to do this with one of my buddy's wives. They're both going in August, and I'm going to do the level 2 later in August. So there are things like that where, like, in a very short period of time, you can get an adequate skill set. And that becomes super valuable if things get weird. It becomes super valuable. I mean, there's a lot of doomsday books out there, from 1 Second After, which is about nukes, to Survivors, which is about the inflation causing the dollar to crash. That's going to happen. I don't know if nukes are going off, but the dollar's gone at some point in our lifetime. There's no fucking two ways about it. In each of those, they say you've got 72 hours till anarchy. 72 hours without power, food, or water till neighbors start robbing each other. So if you're in a city, it's find some space where, like, hey, if shit goes down, can I set up a tent, on your land? That's important. Building a tiny home somewhere, that's important. Having food, having these things accessible within close proximity, that's important. And really building community where you're at. Like, I know every one of my neighbors by name. They know my kids. And we don't vote the same way, we don't think the same way, but we know each other. We have community, and we do look out for each other. And I think that's an important piece, because ultimately that's where your strength lies. It's in the numbers. It's in people supporting people.
Yeah. I love that message of just taking action. I feel like it's, even applies to the stuff you were talking about earlier around nutrition and physical activity and just getting stronger. Maybe to put a bow on the conversation, did you or could you have ever envisioned yourself 5 years ago where you are now?
Fuck no. I mean, it's funny, the 5 years ago thing it's really laughable, because I remember in 2014 when I retired, I thought about that 5-year thing, right? And I was like, comical, because I retired when I was 32 from MMA, and I thought I was going to keep going at least until I was 40. Like, all the shit that I know about longevity and brain healing and all these things, like why retire young, I could stay in the game longer. And I always had this rule, like, if I'm going to, at any stage of the game, whether it was in a low-level fight company all the way up to the UFC, if my record was more losses than wins, I was going to retire then. Just because it's not baseball, it's just a different thing. And so your batting average is fine in baseball, it's dog shit in fighting, right? And that does take a long-term toll. But never in 5 years before that, a year before that, never would have thought I would retire in 2014. Then that happens. We have Bear a year later. I'm still living in my mom's garage. It's like, I didn't know what the fuck I was going to do. I was just still working at a strip club. Having a kid was like, shit, I need to provide for my family. I can't just work at a strip club. So bit by bit, when things change in my life, it's like all systems go on the system change to make it happen. And I never would have thought that we'd be growing our own food and doing all this stuff, or even having the conversations that we're having, to be honest. 5 years ago, no one saw 2020 happening. That wasn't on anyone's radar, So, and still right now, we have trouble seeing that 2008 can happen again overnight, right? It likely will. There's a lot of things that are looming, but every little step I take in the opposite direction helps cushion that.
It's cool to hear that journey over 5 years too, because I feel like that's one of the things that's tough about social media is people will just see like the quote unquote finished product of Kyle Kingsbury, but they don't know how much progress you've made in 5 years. Like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were working at a strip club 5 years ago. You just had a son, and it just shows. It's like you show up every single day, and it's like you see the position that you're in now. It's fucking awesome.
Fuck yeah.
And it's cool for us too to do this episode, because we were saying on the way here, it's like the way that life changes. I was texting a little bit, but like when I first graduated college in 2018, we both started digging into your content, and it changed the way that we thought about the world. So to go from that to being able to interview you is just awesome. It just shows.
That's super rad.
So just DM people on Twitter and get things.
It's funny. I quit social media in February of 2020 or 2021, something like that. It might have been 2020. And like permanently deleted the accounts. I had taken a deep dive into Cal Newport's books, digital minimalism, things like that. I just saw like how much bandwidth it was taking just in my own day-to-day consciousness. Like, oh, should I videotape that? Like, oh shit, I should have videotaped that. Or what do I write that's gonna sound good? Like it was like a virus in my head, but a real one. And it started to weigh on me, and at that point I was like, fuck it, and then after the fact I was like, actually, there's still some pros to that. Like, it's a way you meet people. It's the way podcast guests would tell me, like, hey, this was dope, let me help you share it, right? So like missing that was an issue, but Twitter, I was able to regather all my followers and everything when I signed back up. And I waited until Elon bought the company, cool, all right, less censorship, cool. My wife handles the Instagram and does so beautifully. Every now and then I'll pipe on there and post a meme that she doesn't like, and she's got a lot of fucking fires to put out. But yeah, I think Twitter has connected a lot of people, you know, and I'm sure Facebook has for many other people. Hopefully, you know, we see the decentralized approach and all these things, and I think if Twitter's able to do that, that could change the way that we communicate with one another positively and start to go against the grain, because that's really what we've been missing. Like, you've got these guys that want top-down control. They want to sell all of your fucking information, your biometric data, everything you know, everything you don't know about yourself. They're going to figure out and sell that to somebody. Right. The opposite of that is decentralized. The opposite of that is power back to the people and our ability to communicate with one another. And the war on communication is ever present. You know, Jordan Peterson was talking about this years ago on Rogan's, and everybody's like, no, that's not true. Well, just in Canada. Well, no. Like, right now, it's in everyone's face. Yeah. When Biden announced the Ministry of Truth, you know, like straight out of fucking Harry Potter. Yeah, literally. You know, throw a Dolores Umbridge wig on. Yeah. Dude, it's just ridiculous that we're in the United States and we're having conversations like this. So who knows where 5 year, you know, what's going to happen in 5 years, but all along for the ride.
Are you overall optimistic about our ability to decentralize and just the future overall?
Well, you know, the pendulum swings back and forth, right? And as it swings wide one direction, it's going to come back. And so I feel like the amount of, it really does boil down to education, because, you know, everybody's mad about something. You know, if we can focus the anger on the perpetrators and understand, like, things are a certain way because they were designed that way, that's a part of the waking up process, you know, more than drinking ayahuasca. And I love ayahuasca. It's really understanding the world as it is and coming to terms with that, grieving the loss of the world you thought it was, and then saying, all right, what do we do now to clean up this mess?
Got it. Well, look, man, this has been an amazing conversation. We appreciate you coming on. We'll have to do part 2 in person sometime once the ranch is fully built out or something like that.
Yeah, fuck yeah, absolutely.
We just appreciate everything you're doing and hope to stay in touch. So thanks.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle. This is awesome.
That was dope, yo.
Love it, dude. Appreciate it, man. That was freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was a great combo. Hopefully we didn't hold you up too much.
No, it's all great.
Body care.